I still remember the exact moment I knew. The way my stomach dropped when I saw the messages on her phone. Not just one. Not just a flirtatious exchange that could be explained away. But months of them. Months of lies wrapped in inside jokes and late-night voice notes to a man named Trevor, who happened to be my colleague, my supposed friend, and someone I'd invited into our home more times than I could count. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 38 years old, a structural engineer by trade, and for 6 years I believed I was building something solid with a woman named Priya. We'd met at a conference in Portland, argued passionately about sustainable architecture over overpriced wine, and somehow turned that argument into a relationship. She was brilliant, beautiful, in a way that made people turn around twice on the street, and she laughed like she meant it. At least, I thought she did. I found out on a Tuesday in November. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered, and a notification lit up the screen. I wasn't snooping. I want to make that clear, because in the aftermath, she tried to frame it that way, tried to make my discovery the greater violation. But I saw the name T with a heart emoji, and something in my gut already knew before my brain caught up. I read enough to understand everything. Then I put the phone back exactly where it was, walked to the back porch, and sat in the cold November air for 45 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there while the pieces rearranged themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. The annual Hartwell & Associates Gala was 4 days away. It was the biggest event of the professional calendar for our firm, Black Tie, hosted at the Meridian Hotel downtown, attended by city officials, senior partners, clients, and everyone who mattered in our professional world. I'd been nominated for the firm's Excellence in Design Award. Priya, who worked in urban planning for a city department that frequently collaborated with our firm, was coming as my guest. Trevor would be there too. He was a senior architect at Hartwell, one of my direct colleagues. For 4 days, I said nothing. I watched Priya carefully. The small performances she didn't know I was watching. The way she angled her phone away when she texted. The invented late meetings. The practiced casualness when Trevor's name came up in conversation. I felt like an archaeologist brushing dirt off something ugly. And once you've seen what's underneath, you can't unsee it. On the afternoon of the gala, I finally confronted her. She was sitting at the vanity in our bedroom, working on her makeup, when I leaned against the doorframe and said quietly, "I know about Trevor." The mascara wand stopped. A pause just long enough to be damning. Then she turned around, and I watched her face cycle through 3 different expressions in about 2 seconds. Panic, calculation, and then something that surprised me. Defiance. "What exactly do you think you know?" she asked. I laid it out calmly. The messages I'd seen. The timeline that now made sense. The business trip she'd taken to Seattle in September that she'd said was a city planning summit. I'd done some quiet digging during those 4 days. There had been no summit. She didn't deny it. She sat there for a long moment, and then she said something that I think revealed who she truly was more than anything else that night. "I wasn't going to tell you until after the gala. I didn't want to ruin your moment." As if that were kindness. As if timing the demolition of our relationship around my professional calendar was an act of consideration. "I'm telling you now," I said. "Whatever you're planning to do, whatever scene you've rehearsed in your head for tonight, don't. Come tonight as my guest, be respectful, and we can handle the rest of this privately when we get home. That's all I'm asking." She looked at me in the mirror, and she laughed. Not a cruel laugh, not a guilty one. A laugh of genuine disbelief, like I'd said something absurdly naive. "Nathan," she said, "I think you need to hear this from me directly, and tonight seems as good a time as any. Trevor and I are in love. I'm going to tell people tonight. I'm not going to pretend." I heard what she was really saying. She wasn't just ending us. She was going to end us in public, in front of every person in my professional world, at the very event where I was supposed to receive an award for my work. She was going to stand in that ballroom and announce, in whatever way she chose, that she was leaving me for someone who would also be in that room. Think carefully about what you're choosing, I said. I already have, she replied, and turned back to the mirror. Here is what Priya didn't know, because I had never told her, because it had never been relevant until now. 3 weeks earlier, before I found the messages, before any of this, I had been contacted by Elara Investments, a private equity group that funds large-scale urban development projects. They had been quietly watching my portfolio, specifically a mixed-use sustainable housing project I designed for the East Side Corridor that had won a regional award earlier that year. Elara wanted to discuss a potential partnership, not just a commission, but a full creative and financial partnership on a $30 million development project across 3 city blocks. It was the kind of opportunity that comes once, if it comes at all. Their lead partner, a woman named Constance Adler, was going to be at the Hartwell Gala. She was a silent investor in the firm and attended every year. We had exchanged emails, agreed to meet at the gala informally, and I had spent 2 weeks preparing a preliminary vision document that I carried in my jacket's interior pocket that night. I had also, over those 4 days since finding the messages, done something else. I had spoken quietly and carefully with 2 people. The first was my friend and colleague Jameson Park, who handled HR matters at Hartwell and who I trusted completely. I told him what I'd discovered. Not from spite, but because Trevor's relationship with Priya created a direct conflict of interest on a shared project we were both assigned to, and Jameson needed to know. He thanked me for telling him and said he would handle it discreetly through proper channels. The second person I spoke to was my attorney, Claire Whitmore, who specialized in property and partnership law. Priya's name was on our lease, and we had commingled finances in a way that needed careful untangling. Claire had spent 4 days quietly preparing paperwork. I went to the gala. The Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom was everything it always was. Chandeliers throwing soft gold light over round tables draped in white linen, the low murmur of 300 people in formal wear, the faint sound of a string quartet near the entrance. I arrived alone, slightly before Priya, who had insisted on taking her own car. I found Jameson near the bar and gave him a quiet nod. He nodded back. I found Constance Adler 20 minutes into cocktail hour. She was exactly as her professional profile suggested. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, the kind of person who got to the point. We found a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I handed her the preliminary vision document. For 40 minutes, we talked about the East Side project, about urban density and community integration and green infrastructure. She asked excellent questions. I had excellent answers. By the time the dinner bell rang, she had said 3 words that I will not forget. Let's do this. We exchanged cards. She suggested her team reach out Monday morning to formalize next steps. I walked to my table, feeling something very close to peace. Priya arrived during the salad course. She looked stunning, which somehow made everything worse and better at the same time. Worse because I had loved her. Better because it confirmed I wasn't imagining the person I'd fallen for. She sat beside me, and Trevor was 3 tables away, and for the first half of dinner, everything was surface-level civil. Then, between the main course and dessert, she leaned over to me and said quietly, "I'm going to go sit with Trevor for a bit." "All right," I said. She seemed almost disappointed by my calm. She'd expected something, a scene, a plea, a hushed argument. I gave her nothing. She walked across the room and sat in the empty chair beside Trevor, and I watched the table's reaction ripple outward, the slight confusion, the glances, the moment when Trevor's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked, from where I sat, uncomfortably like guilt. People noticed. In a room full of professionals who had known me and known Priya as a couple for years, that walk across the room was not subtle. Whispers moved through the ballroom like a current. The awards portion of the evening began. My name was called for the Excellence in Design Award, and I walked to the small podium at the front of the room, accepted the plaque from the managing partner, and gave a brief, genuine speech about the team that had made the East Side project possible. I thanked 3 specific colleagues by name. I did not look at Priya's table. I did not look at Trevor. I looked at Constance Adler, who was applauding with what appeared to be genuine warmth. Afterward, Jameson Park was introduced, and he made a brief announcement, framed as a routine procedural note, that Trevor Holt had voluntarily recused himself from the East Side Corridor project pending a review of certain conflict of interest disclosures. It was worded carefully, professionally, with no drama. But in a room of 300 people who understood exactly what that kind of language meant, it landed like a stone dropped in still water. I did not plan that announcement. I had told Jameson the facts. Jameson, who knew Trevor's professional history and the sensitivity of the East Side project, had made his own decision about timing. He told me afterward that he'd chosen the gala deliberately, not to humiliate, but because key partners and clients connected to that project were in the room and deserved to hear it in a controlled setting first, before rumor got ahead of fact. That was his reasoning, and it was sound. From across the room, I saw Priya's face change. She had expected the night to go a certain way. She had expected to walk across that room and claim something, a public declaration, a statement of her choice, maybe even the satisfaction of seeing me diminished. Instead, she sat at Trevor's table while his professional standing quietly and formally unraveled around him, in front of everyone, and there was nothing to say and nowhere to look. I did not approach her again that night. I spent the remainder of the evening talking to colleagues, to Constance Adler's associate, who came over to exchange additional information, to old friends I hadn't seen since last year's gala. I was present and calm and genuinely, quietly happy about what was beginning, even as something I had loved was ending. She texted me at 11:15 that night. We should talk. I replied, "My attorney will be in touch Monday. I hope you're okay." I meant the last part. Even then, even after everything, I meant it. We moved out of the apartment by the end of December. The process was handled entirely through our respective attorneys, and while it was not painless, it was clean. Trevor was reassigned within the firm and resigned 6 weeks later. I heard through mutual colleagues that he and Priya moved in together in the spring. I genuinely hope they're happy. That's not sarcasm. I've thought about it carefully, and I believe the version of me that stays angry is worse off than the version that simply moves forward. Elara Investments and I signed our partnership agreement in February. Ground breaks on the East Side Corridor development next spring. It is the largest project of my career, and I designed every square foot of it from a place of clarity and grief, and eventually something that started to feel, surprisingly, like joy. People have asked me since then, friends mostly, late at night over drinks when the subject inevitably comes up, whether I planned everything that happened at the gala, whether the timing was deliberate, whether I orchestrated Trevor's announcement, whether I engineered the whole evening as revenge. The truth is more complicated, and, I think, more human than that. I told the truth to the people who needed to know it. I prepared for a meeting I'd worked toward for months. I showed up for an award I had genuinely earned. I let her make her choice, and I let the consequences of everyone's choices simply exist in the same room at the same time. I did not humiliate her. I did not engineer her humiliation. I simply refused to be humiliated myself. There is a difference, a real one, and understanding it is what lets me sleep at night without bitterness. The night she chose wrong, I was already choosing right. That, in the end, is all there is to say.